Hey, guess who's back and better than ever? Not Your Average Breakdown Podcast is back from our holiday break. For those of you just joining us or needing a little refresher, it's me, Claudia, alongside my brilliant co host, Alex. While Alex has this knack for diving deep into research and pulling out all the details, I'm always buzzing with questions and curiosity. Alex brings the facts, figures, and in depth analyses, and I jump in with my endless curiosity, ready to explore the angles. This is what makes our podcast so special. So, whether you're on your morning commute, chilling at home, or just looking for some engaging conversation, we've got the perfect space for you. So, in honor of the first episode of the year, Happy New Year, Alex!
Happy New Year, Claudia. You really brought your best game yet.
My word for the year is elevate, and I just
Um,
elevated us.
that was really good. I was not expecting that. I
And
like
not
it.
only not only that, we started off this year really great because you and I got to see each other.
Yes.
Not everybody knows this, but Alex lives near the DC area, and I live in Connecticut, so we don't get to see each other that often. We talk a lot, but we don't get to see each other often. So we got to spend the first of the year together. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was good.
We got to spend a little time with our friends, and then she was back out, but it was nice to see you.
Yeah, it was really good. And I'm glad we had like a whole group together. That was really good because it doesn't happen every time I visit.
No, it doesn't. And we got the band back together, and it felt nice. So, very appreciative on the first of the year. I feel like it's going to be a good year. So, with that, we're going to start off our very first episode of the year. And today's episode is sparked by some recent Epstein headlines that have undoubtedly caught everyone's attention. So, we're going to take a deep dive into high level details surrounding the news. And I already know it's going to be a juicy one. So, I cannot wait for this, Alex.
Oh my god, me too. As I was coming upstairs and Alan was like, "What are you guys recording on?" And I was like, "Jeffrey Epstein," and he was like, "Oh man, it's a spicy one."
Yep.
I'm
He's like,
like,
oh,
"Yeah,
shit.
yeah, we got to start the year strong." So, and I feel like it's everywhere around us. It's on the news, it's on social media. Everywhere you look, you are hearing about Jeffrey Epstein again. And I feel like this is a great opportunity and great time for us to just sort of do a high level introduction and sort of explain who he was and why is he still relevant in 2024. He died in 2019, but he is still making headlines and people are still shitting their pants when because they're fearing that they're going to be named, which is exactly what is happening right now. And so there's just a lot information about it. I was telling you that I didn't feel like my notes are very organized because I did a lot of research. I know a lot about him. I watched a couple of documentaries on him, and I was sort of very invested into the whole situation as it was going down when he got arrested and after the fact, after he got murdered. I say murder.
I
People,
was
yeah,
just going to comment on that.
I know people say he committed suicide. I personally don't believe that. I know it's a conspiracy theory, but whatever. We can dive deeper into that as well. But
Bring it.
so, all right, let's start off.
So, who is Jeffrey Epstein?
All right. Well, Jeffrey Epstein is a disgraced financier who was later on convicted of sex trafficking, prostitution, and running human trafficking and all sorts of things, right? Anything bad that you can think of, he sort of did it. He was a really shady character to begin with, like from early on. So he didn't graduate from college and he quit, I think, on his last year or something in 1974. But then he ended up getting a teaching job, which did require a degree, but he somehow got it without a degree. And I think early on that really showed that his personality was getting him, further than,
Mhm.
his education. And he spent teaching a couple of years in Dalton School in New York City, which is a very prestigious preparatory school for college. It's a private school and preps teens to go to college, for Ivy Leagues colleges. And so he spent there a few years, for about 2 years, and then he left Dalton School and joined Bear Stearns. I don't know if you remember them. They were an investment bank company from New York, and they sort of initiated the 2008 housing crash. They were trading in CDOs, which were the bundle up housing stocks, and they were overestimating them and overselling them, and they sort of inflated the market, and everything started crumbling down in like March 2008. I think they were the first ones to sort of take the hit, and they ended up filing for bankruptcy, and they disappeared. They're no longer a bank anymore. But he started his finance career in Bear Stearns as like a low level, like an assistant to a floor trader or something. In the 70s, that was still a thing where they were all sort of on the floor trading and on the phones, like Wolf of Wall Street. But that's where he started off. The recurring theme with him is that people liked him because he had a charisma. And even though he, as I mentioned, he didn't have a college degree, but he sort of knew his way around. And from early on, what he really started doing is he started making friends with very, very influential people. And that really, from the 80s, that brings us up all the way to today, right? He spent, almost 40 years building relationships with creme de la creme, from foreign dignitaries, foreign presidents, prime ministers, diplomats, U.S. presidents. As we've heard, Bill Clinton and Donald Trump were named in the list, and actors, producers, professors. I mean, the list just goes on, right? He used that he made friends with them not because he liked them. He used it as a leverage. And later on, what he started doing, especially when he ended up buying that island in U.S. Virgin Islands, the Orgy Island as known, he will fly out these, high net worth individuals and celebrities and whatnot. He had a private jet, and they will all fly there and throw parties and, do crazy stuff that I don't even want to think about. But what he was doing is that he was not only bringing them there and then keeping those flight records on who flew on his jet, but he also had hidden cameras all around the house. There were peepholes in each room. They were like, exactly, they were like secret, sort of entrances. And so that way he could see what those people were doing. So if somebody
But Alex, before, so how did it progress there? Because I know it started, okay, so he went from being on the floor, being this assistant to a trader or whatever, he's making all these relationships with these people. So how does this man that gets himself involved with some really bad things, how does the ball start rolling? Like, it had to start somewhere.
True, that's a good question. I sort of skipped over that part. I mentioned that he started making friends in rich circles. He started circling around, very influential people or celebrities or diplomats or whatnot.
Like
And
partying with them, doing all this,
yes, exactly. And, the 80s were much different for New York Wall Street guys than it is now, right? Those were the guys who were making the money. And even in the lowest levels, they could rise up to the ranks very fast, or faster than they do now, because there was not a lot of regulation. There was not a lot of guidance. It was sort of a wild west over there. And he was there at the right time, to do all those things. Right time, right place. He was young, he was ambitious, and so after Bear Stearns, he actually left Bear Stearns a couple of years later after joining them, because there was violation on his file. It's only like partially disclosed, but essentially there was SEC, Security and Exchange Commission violation. And so they told him that he sort of had to leave. And then from there, he just went on to another financial institution and he rose through ranks over there. Eventually, he owned his own hedge fund and he was investing a lot of money. So money goes on money. That's how you say, right?
Money goes on money.
Yeah. What saying do you have?
Money makes money.
Money makes money. Okay, sorry. Yeah, that's
I got you. That's why I'm here.
foreigner over here.
Yeah, foreigner. It's all right. It's all right.
Yeah, money makes money. That's essentially his life story. But he was making substantial money. But then in 1991, he started dating Ghislaine Maxwell, who is also convicted sex trafficker, and he did a range of things as well.
Nice pronunciation, by the way. I mean, that was
Oh,
beautiful.
thank you. She is an heiress to publishing industry. I think she is originally from UK, if I remember correctly. I didn't do a lot of research on her for this specific episode, so this is straight from my memory. But she grew up in England, and she was born into money. Her dad is a very controversial figure, or was a very controversial figure, but she had a lot of money, and they started dating shortly after her father died, and she was very attached to him. So she was also bankrolling a lot of stuff for him, for Jeffrey Epstein.
Mm.
So it wasn't just his money, it was her money as well, but it was
Yeah.
also money from all these other people that he knew.
Okay.
So, it's a mix. It's a
Yeah.
pool of money. Eventually he became who he did, right? So he was living in Florida part-time, had a residence in New York City, but he
He's
left New York City.
successful. Yeah, he's got lots of money. He's got a girlfriend with a lot of money. So like
Exactly.
the guy is just sleeping on beds of money.
Exactly. And if you're running in circles where Donald Trump and Bill Clinton and, Cameron Diaz or whoever are in, then you're on a whole nother level. So that
Yeah.
means you have certain leverage to get into circles like that. That's sort of his, career background, if you will, how he got into finance and how he got to money. That's very disputable, because I don't know if all of the money was his. And I read reports that he was sort of making some shady deals, but he lost a lot of money, especially in 2008, because he invested in Bear Stearns. Obviously, that was his first job as a finance, entry level. And he ended up losing a lot of money when the housing market crashed, and he lost some other money on some different investments that he was doing in 2007. He ended up dropping a lot of investments that he had, because in 2007, Florida, state of Florida, started investigating him. And so there is a little controversy that I found, so they started investigating him for sex trafficking and assaulting a minor. But then somebody apparently reached out to Florida, telling them that somebody from the higher government is telling them to leave him alone because he is like a big asset to them. So I'm not really sure if that was somebody was telling them like, hey, leave him alone because we are investigating him and we're gonna pin him for like something much bigger.
I doubt it.
Or was that, he leveraged one of his friendships that he had, and they sort of told him like, hey, leave him alone, whatever.
So
But
what
then
sparked these investigations though? Like what was like where did he become this shady pervy dude? Like what was he doing?
he was, I feel like I can't even find like a start point, because I was reading an article about him while he was working as a teacher at Dalton School in New York.
Mhm.
He was like, a college dropout. So he was like in his early 20s. And this article was saying how he was sort of like grooming these teenage girls and was treating them as friends, and he was like everybody's favorite teacher, and he had like some inappropriate relationships, or tried to have inappropriate relationships with some of the girls, mind you, teenage girls, even though
Gross.
he's like 22, 23, doesn't matter. You're grooming a 14, 15-year-old girl. Like, that's not okay. So I feel like this sort of behavior followed him his whole life.
Mhm.
It wasn't just something that happened, in his late 40s or something. It just, that's who he was. But then I feel like those people also circle with the same group of people,
Mhm.
that are into that stuff. That's how that grows. It's not just something that you keep for yourself, especially in New York City, and you're very privileged, and even if you have some money, that sort of like plays into it.
So then he moved from New York to Florida, right?
So he moved, yes, from New York to Florida because he started getting on NYPD's radar. So he sort of left New York and had this like huge mansion in Florida. And that's where sort of that was the beginning of the end, if you will. So in the 90s, I don't know if you remember, I think we talked a few days ago about this, when we decided to do this case. You said you watched the
The
Netflix
documentary
documentary.
a long time ago, yeah. That's why, like, some of this, like, rings a bell.
I know, same. I didn't rewatch the documentary, so this is straight from my memory. But as I was doing research, I sort of remember some of these things. So there was this girl, Maria Farmer. She, if you remember, she was the painter in the documentary. She was like painting on the wall, and she had like all these faces and stuff. So
No.
I think she was like 14 or something, and her sister ended up going to work for Jeffrey Epstein, and they promised her that they're going to take her to Europe, and they're going to give her an art scholarship and help her get into the college or something. And
I remember
so
that.
she did it, and she went there. So Maria Farmer and Virginia Goffrey, I think I'm pronouncing that right, maybe not, but they're two key witnesses in his case. They were the one who brought him down, and because they were one of the first people to speak up about what he was doing. They were both underage, and they both had similar experiences. People, so he sort of had a type, okay? He was preying on girls, teenage girls or underage girls who had issues at home, who maybe didn't have a stable family situation. Maybe they were missing a parent. Maybe their parents were drug addicts or something. He was exploiting their vulnerabilities, and he was always telling them how he's going to take care of them and he's going to give them scholarship, or he was paying them, oh, come to my house and massage me, and he would give them like $500, and that meant a lot to these young girls who didn't have anything. And so that was sort of his MO. In Florida, he sort of like expanded what he was doing. He got out of hand, and he got the attention of Florida authorities, but for a very long time he was sort of unapproachable. He was making deals, he was paying them off, and nothing was happening, right? For almost like 10 years that he was living there, nothing was happening, and everybody knew about it.
It was like a revolving door of these young women, girls. I
Exactly.
can even call them women, girls.
Yes. And so he, not only was he having them there in the house, but they were going to his island, and they were forced to perform also all sorts of sexual, favors to whoever was on the island. And
Okay, so tell me about this island because I don't completely recall about it, but I know that it was a private island and shit would go down there, and he was flying, like, really big name people down there.
yes, I mean, that's really what sums it up. It was a private island that he owned. He had a private jet, and he would fly anybody who had money, who wanted interests, who wanted to do something with him. I mean, this is why this list is so controversial now that it's coming up, is because it has like all the names of people who ever came in contact with Jeffrey Epstein. If it was like one phone call, one meetup, one party, they're on the list, right? And everybody's shitting their pants because we don't know if it's just a list or if there are any videos or any photography. Like in case of Prince Andrew, if you remember a few years ago, he got stripped of his royal title and his duties, and he got pretty much shunned from the kingdom, right? Because
I didn't
of
know that.
this.
Because of
Yeah.
this?
Yes. I
Oh.
think it was in like 2020, 2021. It like recently happened because Virginia Goffrey, she has been in court for years fighting it. Like this girl is determined to take this whole establishment down. And so there are pictures of two of them on this island, Prince Andrew and Virginia. And she was saying how for like, X amount of time, Prince Andrew was like a frequent visitor of the island. And every time they were there, he would request Virginia and he would like rape her. And so he was trying to fight it in court for years, and there were a couple of defamation suits and they were going back and forth. And then I think in like 2020 he settled, and everybody was like, oh my fucking god, like this dude settled. And
Yeah.
I know what it means, like in legal terms, but in very simple terms, if you settle, that means that you don't want shit to come out, right?
Yeah.
And so after that happened, the royal family was like, you're out.
Good.
All this exactly because of Virginia, who was like, I'm not fucking with you. Like, I'm taking all of you down.
So there's no way with these lists. I mean, is there one list? Is there multiple lists? Like, how does that work?
So I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I know that there is a list. That is the list that is being disclosed. It's coming out in parts.
Oh.
So this is also thanks to Virginia, and Maria Farmer and all the girls who came and said, hey, this is happening and we're not going to stop. So initially, those documents were sealed. People who were on the list. Apparently, when they raided his house and his island, they
Mhm.
found like insane stuff. I mean, they found like hundreds, maybe thousands of sexually suggestive photographs, fully or partially nude females. And some of those photos confirmed that they were underage females. However, in the lock safe, they were compact discs, like CD style, with like labels of first name, last name, who it was, the date,
Like,
girl pics of people that were on the island, probably doing, God knows what,
like high profile people?
high profile people. That's why they try to keep all those documents sealed, because all these, high level individuals didn't want their names disclosed, and they were fighting it in court for years. But eventually that happened like a few weeks ago. They decided that they're going to disclose all these documents because these girls put in like a lot of effort in it. And finally one of the judges was like, well, we got to disclose this. And I'm assuming it's somebody who was like, we need to take this fucking sex trafficking circle down. And that's what they're doing. The problem with this list is that, as I said, we don't know what the list is, just a list of names.
Right.
So anybody that's on the list is not explicitly, a sex offender. I assume that they were people who wanted to be in his circle because, he was hot and heavy in this New York scene, Florida scene. He was very rich. He was dating Ghislaine Maxwell. So if you wanted to be somebody high and you wanted to run in those circles, you were like, oh yeah, absolutely, I would love to go to the island of Jeffrey Epstein, right? And then you go there and then you see like orgies and stuff, and you're like, you know what, I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
but that person is still going to be on the list.
Yeah. And like, so, that kind of lifestyle is that party lifestyle. So, anybody who's anybody that gets to invited to these parties, I'm imagining wants to be on that list in some capacity, maybe not even knowing exactly how far they go, but they're, the word gets out that these are pretty big, and I'm sure that a lot of shit goes down. Whether what's your vice? Do you want drugs? You want alcohol, you want young girls, and maybe people don't know the definition of young girls. Maybe they do. They can say whatever they want at this point, but that's kind of the place to be if you're running in that circle.
Yes, exactly. I mean, just because they're on the list doesn't mean that they were, sex offenders, but we just don't know because they're, as I mentioned earlier, they're releasing lists like in parts. And so I saw, so they're releasing it to the media, and then the media is reviewing it, and then they're publishing it. So today, another set of names came out, and as I was reviewing it, obviously Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, they're on the list. We knew they're on the list. I've heard stories, I read articles, I listened to, people on social media talk about. Do you remember the whole thing with Donald Trump and like golden showers in
Oh,
Russia?
no.
Oh my
No,
God. It was like,
but I want to hear about it now.
so I don't remember exactly what it was, but in while he was still president, there was like all those videos of him coming out that he was like, oh, the locker room talk where he was like, oh, if I just want to have a female, I approach her and I grab her by the pussy or whatever.
Yes. Yes.
So
How could you forget that?
so people kept releasing like these, I don't know, like audios or stories or whatnot. And there was a story that was, I don't think it was ever confirmed, but I guess there was a story how Donald Trump in Russia, he was partying with like Russian diplomats, politicians, or whatever. And they had like all these Russian prostitutes.
To be
And
a fly
then,
on the to be a fly on the wall in that
right?
party.
Exactly. Also, it's Donald Trump. Like,
So
like,
awkward.
yeah,
So
this has
awkward.
nothing to do with politics, but he's just like a gross looking
Yeah.
man.
Yep.
But he enjoyed golden showers from these like Russian prostitutes.
Jesus.
But there was, Bill Gates was on the list, and he was like, oh, well, we were trying to do some business deal, and he invited me, but then like I never went after that one try because, Bill Gates maybe wasn't into golden showers and underage girls. So
Yeah,
I
like Bill
feel
Gates is like somebody that to me that wears like tidy whities and he's like going home and he's I want nothing to do with this. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. That
I don't know.
I give him a pass. I personally feel like I give him a pass.
I don't know if that's correct because remember he divorced his wife in recent years, like a year or two ago, and I guess like they divorced or separated. I'm not sure if they're like fully divorced, but they separated because he was having an affair. And she discovered some text messages, and it's like he was having an affair with like a much younger woman.
Damn, Bill.
And I think like the text messages were kind of kinky.
Oh,
So
he's a freak.
I
Okay. All
know.
right. Well, you know what? I stand corrected. I thought he was a boring dude.
I feel like when you have that much money, and this is, I might be stereotyping, but I don't care. I mean, it's just my opinion. Um, when you have that much money, I feel like you get bored with a lot of things because you have
Oh,
access to them, especially as a guy. And so
yeah.
I feel like that's why they get into this weird shit. But there is a line, that you're not supposed to cross. Like golden showers, okay, whatever. If that's your thing, pay prostitutes to pee on you, whatever. Underage girls, sex trafficking,
Yeah.
fucking
No.
stop.
No.
Like absolutely
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
So yeah,
We don't kink shame here,
no,
but
absolutely
that's
not.
the line that you
That's
draw
like
is underage. It's gross.
no.
It's fucking go to jail, die.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we got
Oh my God,
we
where did
got
we go
sidetracked.
from
Sorry,
where
this
did
is great.
where did I go from here? Okay. So how do you come back from that? So how do we get here? So all right, he got into some really freaky shit. And so and the people that he surrounded himself, some of them were into it and some of them were not. Some of them were unfortunate enough to come into contact with this dude and now they're grouped into this lump of people that really we don't know. I mean, we don't know who did or who didn't, but there's a high possibility that these people participated in something freaky and something a, a little crazy.
I hope something comes out of it, the list, because the problem is that when he got charged or he got indicted in 2019, he got arrested, ended up in jail. There's a whole controversy, right? We discussed it in the beginning when I said like he was murdered, and you're like, hold up, he was,
Mhm.
it was a suicide.
So
Well, there is,
technically on record it was a suicide. And how was the suicide? Do you know how he like
yeah.
did it?
So he hung himself with his bed sheets off of a bunk bed. However, I'm gonna put a disclaimer: it's not a conspiracy theory or anything. We don't know, obviously. Like, we can just
No,
speculate, right?
we don't. But this is a conversation between you and I, and we can talk about whatever we want. So
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is my opinion based on like the I don't want to say based on a documentary and like articles, because obviously those are also, they can be very subjective. But like, I was reading as I was doing research for this, I was like, oh, let me look up what actually came out of like his death, right? Like, what is the official report? And so I started reading these articles where pathologists and like forensic examiners were giving their opinion on like how his neck was cracked and what bones were broken and stuff. And like, they were saying that the way his bones were broken and the bruises were sort of placed on his neck were more consistent with suffocating, like choking,
like strangulation.
like strangulation, like that, not by hanging. And so that made me think, okay, well, maybe, well, I mean, I'm sure a
Can't
lot of people on this list wanted him dead, right? Like,
right.
there was no question about that.
Can you rule
But
it out? You know?
let me throw you another one. He was in jail and he had an attempted suicide. It was the same deal, bed sheet,
Oh, he
whatever.
tried to kill himself one time before? Oh, okay.
Yes, but he survived. They found him unconscious and they brought him back. So it made me think, like, okay, well, maybe they tried to
Yeah,
kill
like you
him.
had one attempt. This makes sense. Okay.
But few days like prior to everything happening, he was talking to his lawyers and he said, I want to leave. I'm gonna go call my mom. Well, his mom is dead for like
What?
15 plus years, right? So that's like number one. Number two, he was telling the psychiatrist, because after his suicide attempt, obviously they put him on suicide watch and he had to be evaluated by a psychiatrist, and all this stuff that goes into place when somebody tries to kill themselves. And he's like telling her, like, why would I want to kill myself? I have a wonderful life, like I have a lot to live for, like I know I fucked up, blah blah blah, but like I don't want to kill myself. So that's number two. Number three, because he was on a suicide watch, he was put in this like special cell and he was supposed to have a roommate at all times. And his cellmate, he had a court date and he never returned back to that cell that day. And they didn't put anybody else in his cell.
Convenient.
Very convenient. And then the two guards that were on the overnight shift, they were, because like this hall or whatever floor or wing of a prison, that's where they kept like people that had to be on some sort of a watch. They are supposed to watch him or go check up on him every 30 minutes. Well, these guards didn't do that. They falsified the records saying that they did. But then there was a camera that showed them that like two of them slept for at least like 2.5 hours, which means that they didn't check up on him for 2.5 hours. And then very conveniently, the cameras facing his cell, Jeffrey Epstein's cell, the door, the actual door, the two cameras were dead.
What? Oh, I mean, come on.
I
Come
mean,
on.
people say it's a conspiracy theory, but I'm like,
But I mean, it's not far-fetched because what are the chances of that perfect storm happening? Come on.
all of these things just aligning for him to off himself. And then one of the other thing that I saw, it was like, well, Jeffrey Epstein was 6 feet tall. Like, he hanged himself from a bunk bed. Like, there's
It's
just
pretty
so many
hard.
irregularities. Yeah, like
It's
they
pretty
moved
hard.
the body. They were not supposed to move his body, but they illegally transported him to a hospital to try to resuscitate him. But legally, that's not how it was supposed to be, because they're supposed to treat a suicide as a crime scene, and so they were not supposed to take his body. The police was supposed to take pictures of him, which they didn't.
Mm.
So then there is another conspiracy theory saying that he actually didn't die, because nobody saw him besides the guard. And
Oh,
whatever body that they photographed later on in the hospital can be,
I don't like that one.
fabricated. Yeah.
I don't like that one.
I mean, I would not be surprised. But, when you have so many things that went wrong that day, it's bound to have some conspiracy theories because there is no way so many things went wrong for this guy to have like a perfect suicide.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, a perfectly private suicide, you
yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I hate that. Well, so what about I had read something about Epstein's final fuck you, which was can you talk about that a little bit because that intrigued me a little bit.
So I saw that was one of the things that you wanted to discuss, but really rich people do that. They put their properties into irrevocable trusts.
So
And that's
he
how
did this right before he died. Like 2 days right before he died, he did some legal transaction.
people are saying that he committed suicide because this list that we are getting released now
Uh-huh.
was supposed to be released to the court.
Mhm.
And he felt like that's just going to bring so much more because, mind you, he wasn't sentenced. And that's what I wanted to say. We just sort of got off track. This podcast is fire.
We're going where the wind takes us, Alex.
Yeah, I see. This is going to be good. He ended up dying in jail in
Right.
2019. And because the guy was dead, there was no case to prosecute. So they dismissed the case.
So none of that evidence had to come to light, basically, you're
Exactly.
saying.
Yes.
Okay. But what did he do the couple days before? He did some legal transaction.
Yes. So because I'm assuming, this is my theory, because he knew that he's gonna have to face the court and he is potentially gonna get sentenced. And if he gets a court date and a jury, a lot of shit is gonna come to light.
Yeah.
Right. So they're gonna keep digging up for evidence. And so he wanted to protect that. And so what he did, he put his island pretty much into a trust. And when you do that, you own it, but not even you can touch it. I don't know if that makes sense. The biggest benefit of a trust, in my opinion, because I did an extensive research on them, if you want to save your house from a creditor, from an ex-wife, from the bank, from like whoever, right? From the IRS, from the government. You don't own this property anymore. It's owned, your house is owned by a trust. So if you file for bankruptcy, if you get divorced and you're in court, nobody can touch this house. That's why they do it. That is the main
Right.
reason why they do it. But he even had a bigger reason to do it, right? Because he didn't want anybody to snoop around whatever the fuck was happening in this island.
There's been enough time for information to just be destroyed at this point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I feel like it's almost like somebody's also keeping it as like the ultimate weapon against God knows how many individuals. It's a ring of sex trafficking and prostitution and God knows what else. And so this is a great weapon. Whoever has this information, if they do have it, like it can be a great weapon to destroy whoever, as in, I'm assuming this is all like depending on what the list comes out to, if they can actually link, well, why are these people on the list? Are they related to some crime that they committed on this island or in Florida or in New York or wherever the fuck they were? They partied in Europe very often, so you don't know. But let's say Donald Trump can be a potentially presidential candidate still for 2024, and this can be a great opportunity for people to smear his name even more. He already has a lot of legal trouble going on, and so this might be one of those things. People are holding it like in the back of their pocket, like, oh, if he gets too close to the presidency, we're just going to destroy him. It can be for anybody else. Anybody who's on that list, God knows
Right.
what they're involved into.
That's crazy. So, um, at this point, they're going to continue just releasing information about this case.
Yes, until I think there was like 2,000 pages unsealed. Not all of them are names, obviously, but there are being unsealed and in parts being released to the news outlets, and the news outlets are reviewing them and then publishing them.
I can't even imagine what's to come in this one. I really can't.
I am like every day when I'm watching news, I'm like, something's gonna come out. Something's gonna come out. Something's gonna happen because something has to happen, right? Like,
It's a fucked up story that just keeps giving.
yeah, literally. And God knows what else is there. We only know whatever we know from like
Yeah,
few girls that
filtered
came forward.
information.
Exactly.
Yeah,
There's like hundreds of girls that were involved into this, and there's like hundreds, if not thousands, of people that were involved, on the other side of this story. And so, but only like six of them came forward. Imagine if all 100 came forward.
I can't. It's a really gross story. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, that wraps it up, but by no means did we even, you know, did we even cover a quarter of it? I mean, there's just so much stuff to this story. I think a good start if people want to learn more or their interest is piqued is to watch that Netflix documentary Filthy Rich because that is a good timeline. It tells a good story. A lot of it is, they're trying to mesh it together just like we are. And then Netflix also has that documentary on her. How do you say her name?
Ghislaine Maxwell. It's
Ghislaine.
also, yeah. So it's like they made it series. So it's Filthy Rich, Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy
Okay.
Rich, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Oh, okay. So it's spotlighting both of them.
Yeah. Yep.
And what happened, just out of curiosity, what happened to her? Do you know?
Yes. So she got sentenced to like 25 years in prison.
Okay. Yeah, because I have no
And
respect. There's not
uh
enough time to go over her, but I'm just
no,
saying
yeah,
I have
no.
no respect for that woman.
I
So
mean, she played a huge role in whatever he was doing, but that's a whole nother podcast. So
whole nother podcast, and we ain't got time.
yeah, we don't have time for that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a massive thank you to each and every one of you listeners for tuning in and joining us. Your support means the world, as usual. If you've enjoyed today's episode or have any thoughts, insights, or even topic suggestions you'd love for us to explore in the future, we'd absolutely love to hear from you. Don't hesitate to reach out to us at nyabpodcast@gmail.com. And stay connected with us beyond the podcast by following us on social media.
If you want to follow us on social media, our handle is NYAB Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, former Twitter, known as X now, and Snapchat.
That's a lot. It's a
It
lot,
is.
people. No excuses. So, as we venture further into this new year, Alex and I are beyond excited for the episodes ahead. With your continued support, get ready for more exciting topics, great chats, and lots of podcast fun ahead. See you guys.
Bye, everyone.